The school called at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Iris had a fever of 102 and needed to be picked up immediately. I was in the middle of a client presentation. My boss was 3 feet away. The nearest bathroom was down 2 hallways. I had exactly one option, and I took it. I called my mom. "I'm not your babysitter, Marissa." 5 words. That's all it took to change everything between us. She hung up before I could respond. Just hung up. Like my 7-year-old daughter shivering with fever at school was an inconvenience she could simply decline. By the time I got there 2 hours later, Iris was sitting on a concrete bench outside the main entrance. Outside. In 40-degree weather. Hugging her backpack like it might keep her warm. The school said they couldn't keep her inside. Short-staffed. Policy. Whatever excuse made them feel better about leaving a sick child in the cold. But that wasn't the school's fault. Not really. That was on one person. My mother, Deborah. And what I did next. Some people called it petty. Others called it necessary. But honestly, I just called it protection. Let me back up a bit so you understand who we're dealing with here. I'm Marissa. 32. Single mom. The kind of person who learned early that staying calm under pressure isn't a personality trait, it's a survival mechanism. My apartment is small but warm. Soft blankets everywhere, lamps that give off gentle light instead of that harsh overhead brightness. Nothing fancy, but safe. And safe matters when you're raising a kid who still believes the world will catch her when she falls. Iris has my eyes but not my history. I've worked hard to keep it that way. She's 7. She twirls around the kitchen singing off-key. She leaves glitter in places I'll never fully vacuum out. She's everything I wasn't allowed to be as a kid, loud, messy, joyful, free. My parents live across town in a house that always feels colder than the actual temperature outside. My mother, Deborah, carries herself like she's always right about everything. Sharp, polished, unyielding. When I was little, she'd tell me I was too sensitive, like feeling things deeply was a character flaw I needed to fix. My father, Martin, learned early that the easiest way to keep peace was to stay silent. He's perfected that silence into an art form. He's there, but not really. Present, but absent. Still, I tried. Holidays. Birthdays. Sunday visits. I showed up even when it cost me emotionally. I kept hoping that being a grandmother might soften something old and rigid inside her. That maybe she'd be different with Iris than she was with me. Sometimes she'd hold Iris with this stiff smile, and for just a moment, I'd imagine a different version of us. The version I'd wanted since I was a kid. But there were always these small cracks. Quick dismissals. Comments that felt like paper cuts, small but stinging. Moments where she treated Iris like an accessory instead of a child. I ignored them. Smoothed them over. Convinced myself that keeping peace was the same as keeping family. Then came that afternoon in late winter. The call from the school. The fever. The panic. And my mother's voice, flat and clipped, cutting through the noise of my office like a knife I'd been waiting years to feel. "I'm not your babysitter." It didn't just break something. It revealed what had been broken all along. The school never should have let Iris wait outside. But by the time I got there, the damage was done. She was curled up on that bench near the front steps, her backpack clutched against her chest. Her breath came out in little clouds. Her cheeks were flushed, not from fever, from cold. When she saw me, she didn't run into my arms like she usually did. She just stood up slow and tired and whispered, "Can we go home now?" Something inside me went quiet. Heavy. Unmovable. I knelt down and checked her forehead with the back of my hand. Still warm, but not dangerously so. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders and carried her to the car even though she was getting too big for that. She didn't protest. Just buried her face in my neck and held on. The drive home was silent except for her breathing. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were closed, but I could tell she wasn't sleeping. She was doing that thing kids do when they're trying to process something they don't have words for yet. That night, after I got her settled on the couch with ginger tea and a blanket, I kept replaying everything. My mother's tone. The way she hung up before I could finish speaking. The way that receptionist had explained, almost apologetically, that Iris couldn't stay inside because they were short-staffed. I wanted to blame everyone. The school. The receptionist. The universe. But that 2-hour wait in the cold. That belonged to one person. Deborah. I sat on the floor next to the couch, watching Iris sleep. Her fever had broken, but she looked so small under that blanket. Fragile in a way that made my chest hurt. I thought about all the times my mother had made me feel small. All the times she dismissed my feelings, my needs, my pain. I'd survived it. Learned to build walls and keep moving. But Iris. She didn't deserve to learn those same survival skills. Still, the old instinct kicked in. Give it time. Don't escalate. Don't start a fight you can't win. I'd spent my whole life choosing softness in the face of her sharpness. Believing that peace was worth any personal cost. 3 days passed. Then the voicemail started. First, my aunt. Your mom says she needs your help. What's going on? Then Beth, my mother's friend. She's been trying to reach you. Did something happen? Then my father, sounding tired. Your mother's upset. Can you please call her back? None of them mentioned Iris. Not one. I listened to each message once, then deleted it. No anger. No tears. Just this calm, clear certainty that I was done being the one who always bent. By then, I'd slipped into this strangely steady stillness. I wasn't ignoring them to punish anyone. I just didn't have anything left to give. But the real turning point didn't come from the voicemails. It came a week later when Iris and I were at the big retail store near my parents' neighborhood. I rarely shopped there, too many memories, but Iris needed frosting for a class project. We were headed to Beth's house afterward for a baking day Iris had been excited about all week. We were halfway down the baking aisle when I heard her voice. Marissa. Not soft. Not warm. Just startled. Iris turned first. She offered this polite little smile. Nothing like the bubbling joy she used to show her grandmother. Deborah bent down, arms open, but Iris didn't move. She just glanced at the frosting box in her hand and asked me if she could get the one with sprinkles instead. My mother straightened slowly. For the first time in years, her expression actually cracked. Why are you here? She asked. We're going to a baking day, I said. At Beth's. The way her face froze told me everything. She finally felt it. The absence. The distance. The consequences. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't rush to fill the silence. Deborah blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Beth's? Why would you go there? Her voice had that sharp edge, the same one she'd used on me my whole childhood. An edge meant to correct, to belittle, to pull me back into place. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her softness she'd never given me. She forced a smile. Too bright. Too strained. Well, I could come along. I haven't seen Iris in a while. Before, I might have paused. Considered. Tried to smooth things over. But that version of me had dissolved on a cold bench outside Iris's school. No, I said simply. You're not invited. The color drained from her face. I watched the shock break over her like a wave. She stepped closer, her perfume too familiar. Marissa, this is ridiculous. You're still upset about that school thing. I was busy. You know you overreact sometimes. Why drag this out? Busy. Overreact. Drag this out. The same script she'd used since I was old enough to cry. And right there, standing in the baking aisle under fluorescent lights, something clicked into place. I'd been waiting my whole life for her to see me. To acknowledge what she'd done. To apologize without conditions or excuses. But she never would. Because in her version of the story, she was always right. Always justified. Always the one who'd been wronged. I crouched beside Iris, who was comparing 2 jars of sprinkles like the world wasn't cracking open behind us. Are you ready? I asked. She nodded, placed the jar in the cart, and slipped her hand into mine. We walked past Deborah without another word. That night, 4 voicemails waited on my phone. One angry. One confused. One crying. One pleading for Iris. I didn't listen twice. I didn't respond. And that silence, the very thing she'd always used as a weapon against me, suddenly belonged to me. Days passed. My father texted the way he always did. Not to take responsibility. Not to ask what happened. but to urge me back into my role as the family's emotional buffer. You've made your point. Your mother is miserable. What do you want from her? I stared at that message for a long time. What did I want from her? An apology would have been nice. Accountability. Some acknowledgement that leaving a 7-year-old in the cold for 2 hours was cruel and wrong. But I'd learned something in those quiet days. I didn't need her to give me those things. I could give them to myself. I could acknowledge my own hurt. I could hold myself accountable for protecting my daughter. I could apologize to Iris for every time I'd made her sit through uncomfortable dinners or dismissive comments because I was too afraid to draw boundaries. But he didn't understand. This wasn't a point. It was a line. Then came the envelope. Thick, cream-colored. Too formal for anything good. Inside was a straightforward notification. My parents had updated their will. I was no longer the executor. Allison, my cousin who once called Iris dramatic for crying at her own birthday party, was now in charge. It was meant to hurt me. Instead, it clarified everything. I placed the letter on the counter. No anger. No tears. Just a quiet, solid certainty settling into my bones. They wanted distance. I'd give it to them. But even as I stepped back, I knew something bigger was coming. Some shift I could feel but not see yet. Like the air tightening before a storm. By the end of February, I'd gotten used to the quiet. Not peaceful quiet. More like the kind that settles in after a long storm but still smells like rain. My phone barely buzzed anymore. When it did, it was a short text from my dad, a guilt-laced voicemail from my mother, or a clipped reminder from Allison about some family update I hadn't acknowledged. I'd stopped answering. Stopped explaining. Stopped trying to fix what none of them wanted to face. And in the stillness, Iris changed too. She stopped asking when we'd see Grandma. Stopped wondering why we didn't visit on Sundays anymore. She just moved around our little apartment with this softer, steadier confidence. Like she'd learned in her own quiet way that safety isn't a place, it's a person. We started new routines. Saturday morning pancakes with Beth. Walks in the park where we'd collect leaves and make up stories about where they came from. Movie nights where we'd build a fort out of couch cushions and blankets. Simple things. But they felt sacred in a way our Sunday visits to my parents' house never had. Then on a bitter Thursday night, the storm finally broke. Just before midnight, my phone lit up. I didn't recognize the feeling in my chest when I saw the name. It wasn't fear. It wasn't worry. It was resignation. An exhausted acknowledgement that whatever came next had been brewing for years. I let it ring. One call. Then another. When I finally checked, there were 3 missed calls from my dad. Then a text. Power's out. Your mom slipped on the porch. I can't get the car out. Can you come help? For a moment, I pictured the scene. The steep driveway she always refused to let anyone shovel. The frozen walkway she insisted she could handle herself. The porch light that flickered when the wind hit a certain angle. And her. Deborah. Angry, cold, stunned that the world wasn't bending to her will. The part of me that had spent my childhood trying to please her flinched. Reflex, not desire. But then another image came. Iris on those school steps. Tiny body curled against the cold, breath turning to mist, waiting for someone who never came. I typed one word. No. And I put my phone face down. I slept better than I had in weeks. In the morning, sunlight cut across my bedroom floor. My phone showed 7 more missed calls and 2 voicemails. One frantic, one crying. I didn't press play. Instead, I called Beth and asked if she wanted to take Iris to the Children's Museum. She said yes without hesitation. That's who she was. Steady. Present. Soft where my mother was sharp. We spent the day wandering through hands-on exhibits, laughing at Iris's hiccups when she ran through the bubble room, eating pancakes at a diner that smelled like warm syrup and childhood. At no point did Iris ask where my parents were. The next wave came through Allison. She called late in the afternoon, her voice pitched somewhere between concern and condescension. Your mom fractured her wrist. Your dad's back is out from helping her. They've been without power for 2 days. Maybe you should consider being the bigger person here. I almost laughed. Bigger person. As if I hadn't spent my entire life being exactly that. I already am, I said. That's why I'm keeping Iris away. She sputtered, caught off guard. You don't mean. I do. I hung up before she could finish. The next day, an email arrived. Long, rambling, full of sentences that almost resembled apologies but never quite made it there. The kind my mom always crafted when she needed something, not when she understood something. I'm sorry things got out of hand. I miss you both. Family should stick together. I don't know how we ended up here. Every line skirted the real issue. Not once did she mention Iris outside that school. Not once did she admit what she'd done. I closed it and went on with my day. By early March, the temperature dropped even lower. The roads shimmered with thin ice that seemed to hold the whole city hostage. I wrapped Iris in her warmest coat and scarf, and we drove to a craft fair in a small town an hour away. She wanted to buy sparkly string for friendship bracelets. She held my hand the entire time. On the drive back, Beth spotted a car on the shoulder. A black SUV with hazard lights blinking in the gray afternoon. She said my name softly. I slowed just enough to see through the frost-blurred windows. It was my parents. My dad hunched over the steering wheel. My mom leaning back, her wrist wrapped, her face pale. They looked small in a way I'd never seen them. Like the world had finally handed them a mirror instead of a microphone. For a moment, I hovered on the edge of stopping. Not because I felt obligated, but because the child I used to be still lived somewhere in my bones. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My foot hovered between the brake and the gas. Beth didn't say anything. She just waited, letting me make my own choice. Then Iris looked up from the back seat, humming a tune as she braided her sparkly string. I pressed the gas. In the rearview mirror, I watched them disappear into the gray afternoon. And I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not guilt. Just peace. When we got home, I made dinner while Iris showed Beth her crafts. The hum of the apartment heater. The clatter of dishes. The soft laughter. It all felt like a life I'd built intentionally, piece by piece, without realizing it. But even then, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. That night, as I tucked Iris into bed, she showed me a drawing. A small pink house. 3 stick figures. Me, Iris, and Beth. Iris in the middle, holding both our hands. Can I put it on the fridge? She asked. Of course. She paused before skipping off. Mom, do I still have a grandma? The question caught me off guard. Not because of what she asked, but because she asked it without anger or sadness. Just curiosity. Like she was rearranging the world in her head and trying to understand where everything fit now. Yes, I said softly. But things are complicated. She nodded in that wise, unassuming way children sometimes do. Maybe she forgot how to be nice. After she went to bed, I stared at that drawing until the room blurred. In all my hurt, in all my protecting, I'd forgotten the simplest truth. Iris had her own story, her own feelings, her own understanding of family. And maybe she wasn't ready to erase people the way I'd been forced to. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the sunrise through our small window. The drawing was already on the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a butterfly Iris had picked out months ago. 3 people. Not 5. But happy. I thought about what it meant to be the bigger person. For years, I'd thought it meant absorbing the hurt. Staying quiet. Making myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. But maybe being the bigger person actually meant this, knowing when to protect yourself and the people you love. Knowing when to say no. Knowing when to walk away. So I picked up my phone and, for the first time in weeks, typed a message. Do you want to see Iris next weekend? No apology. No conditions. Just an opening. My mother replied in 3 minutes. Yes. The following Saturday, we met at a park. Neutral ground. Cold but brighter than the weeks before. My parents sat on a bench like people unsure whether they were welcome. Iris approached them slowly, then turned to me for permission before saying hello. They said it back. Then she asked, Grandma, will you push me on the swing? My mother looked stunned. Not triumphant. Not relieved. Just stunned. She looked at me. I nodded. And in that moment, small, fragile, real, the storm finally began to settle. My mother walked toward the swing like the ground beneath her might crack. She placed her good hand on the back of the seat and pushed gently, almost cautiously, like she feared Iris might change her mind. Iris leaned back, letting the wind catch her hair, her small boots brushing the dirt with each pass. My parents didn't rush, didn't overstep, didn't try to claim a place they hadn't earned. They simply existed in the background, quiet, tentative, aware. For the first time, that silence wasn't a weapon. It was space. I sat on a nearby bench, watching the scene unfold with this strange blend of relief and ache. I wasn't healed. Neither were they. But the sharp edges inside me had softened, rounded by time and distance and the realization that my power had never come from punishment. It came from protection. Protecting Iris. Protecting myself. The visit lasted less than an hour. No speeches. No forced apologies. Just small, careful steps. When it was time to leave, my parents didn't ask for more. They simply nodded, grateful for what they'd been given. A week later, my dad emailed me a flyer for Iris's school fundraiser, asking if they could attend. Only if it's okay with you. I said yes. With boundaries. They followed everyone. They stayed in the back, clapped quietly, left without trying to rewrite history. Another drawing appeared on our fridge soon after. Same pink house. But now 5 figures. And for the first time, the picture didn't hurt. It felt like a beginning. Not perfect, but possible. In the end, nothing returned to the way it was. And that was the point. We didn't rebuild the old version of our family. We built a quieter, sturdier one. Shaped by boundaries instead of fear. Iris felt safe again. And I finally understood that protecting her would always matter more than keeping the peace. Thanks for listening, and if this story resonates with you, don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength when family tests your limits. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away until they learn to meet you where you are.